Today I'm going to show you guys how to produce kick-ass weathering effects using acrylics.
That the entirety of the cosmos is accessible through each and every individual's mind, connecting to the great mind, the great spirit.
Welcome back to the channel, collectors. So as you guys know, I'm primarily a figure and miniature painter and not a scale modeler. I'm also an artist and I'm terribly poor. I don't want to invest in another set of paints which I would only use for only specific users. I want to work with what I have so that I can become a better miniature painter. So in my research in scale modeling, I've seen scale modelers use a whole range of different paints which I have not tried in my entire life. There are very specialized paints such as enamels, chipping medium, and many other materials which creates very realistic weathering effects. In this video, I'm going to use the paints that I already have, which are acrylics, so that I can produce weathering effects on the Chaos Knight Rampager. So if you are ready to make something really dirty and really old, let us begin. Weathering tip number 1, chipping. What is chipping? Chipping happens when the surface which has already been painted is damaged and the paints start to flake off, revealing the under material. In my research, scale modelers tend to use a vast range of techniques to do chipping. So the most traditional technique that they have applied is the salt and hairspray technique, which produces really awesome effects. Additionally, they also have pre-made products such as heavy chipping from AK, light chipping from AK to produce similar effects. However, can I produce chipping effects without this specialized material? Yes, you can. So I'm going to share with you guys 2 different techniques so that you can produce chipping on your own.
Alright, so right here we're going to create some randomized effect for the sponge. So I'm just going to peel off and create a rougher edge on the sponge right here. Okay, with the use of a pair of precision tweezers, I'm going to be compressing the sponge to only reveal the random edge. So right here I'm going to be taking some of the paint. It's straight on, there's no dilution, and I'm just going to dab it on a flat surface until I achieve an effect like this. We're going to do some chipping on the Knight Rampager right now. Okay, so this chipping that I'm going to be doing right here now, I'm going to be creating the effect that this blood red arrow has been worn down, because I would assume that this blood red is painted upon this white armor, and due to years of neglect and just general non-maintenance, the paint will be chipping off. So the paint that I'm using now is sort of like the mid-tone of the white armor below. Right now I'm using Vallejo model color stone grey to sort of match the underlying paint. So when you're doing chipping, you've got to think about the layers of paint and how they are ordered. So in this aspect of this carapace, I would say that the frame order will be metal, some degree of primer, white paint, and then eventually the red paint which was painted on. So right here, this is level 1 of chipping, where we go from the red to the white. Similarly, I'm also going to do this for the other arrows which I've painted to create a similar effect. I find that this effect would make chipping look a lot more realistic, because we are not sort of like if you compare this to, say, chipping medium sometimes gives a lot more randomness. However, because of this randomness, sometimes you get very huge chunks of paint being flicked off, and sometimes that's not what you want and you can't control. I feel that with sponge chipping, you can control a lot more. Okay, so right now I'm going to be using Vallejo model color ivory. So these chips that I'm including are sort of like to symbolize the highlights on the chips which we have done. So say for example, when a material gets chipped, the surface definitely isn't smooth, and some of this surface would definitely reflect light, and due to the reflection of light, it gets highlighted. Okay, the second form of chipping that I would like to show you is how I do brush chipping. So I tend to use brush chipping for the more precision areas which I need to do brush chipping. Right now I'm just using a mix of Games Workshop Rhinox hide and a very fine brush. Currently I'm using a DaVinci size 0 to break down the edges. So right now the level that I'm going to is, remember previously that we broke down from the red to the white armor carapace. Right now we are breaking down all the way to the metal, and there's some rust involved. If you like to do a more controlled chipping, you might consider adding a little bit more grey to show a little bit of metal before hitting the primer, then the metal. However, in this case I'm just going straight to show that this edges has already been worn all the way down to the metal, and the metal that has been exposed is already rusted. I feel that this gives a very interesting appearance, and it sort of frames the colors because it is a very high contrast technique where the very light colors are already framing these extreme dark colors, and the dark colors of the rust sort of like in the shape of the area that you are trying to frame. In this case we are trying to frame the cockpit, which allows a very high contrast and readable effect.
Weathering tip number 2, streaking. So in my research, this is how I found scale modelers doing streaking. No, I'm kidding. So I'm going to talk about what is streaking first. So streaking is actually water washing down sediments in vertical lines, which creates these streaking lines. You might have seen it on cars, you might have seen it on walls, and we are going to replicate the effect using acrylics.
Alright, so for the second part we're going to do a bit of streaking. So how armor modelers usually do streaking is they use enamels and oils. And I find that enamels and oils give a very amazing transparent effect, but as an acrylic painter I choose to use some degree of ink to sort of replicate this effect. So by streaking, what I'm doing now is I'm using a thinned down version of Green Stuff World walnut ink and orange ink to create this transparent effect. So what causes this streaking effect is that when a piece of armor is exposed to the environment, there is definitely water involved, and water causes rust. However, the water still has to exit the area somehow, and usually it's in a downward manner. So usually from this downward manner, sediments such as the iron oxide as a suspension is being brought down, and hence causing this streaking effect. However, because it is a downward motion of flow, you will see that it's more intense in the top, and usually the streaks will fade to the bottom. Hence, this is why I'm using my fingers to smudge the bottom area to show that increasingly it is less and less intense as there is less pigment flowing out of the rusting area. So you can also use a cotton bud in lieu of a finger if you choose so. However, for me, in the name of convenience, I like to use my fingers, and don't judge me on that. Okay, similarly, what you can use this is you can also use this to join up areas of rust, so that you can create bigger areas of rust through this stippling method. You can use the ink to create more random chipping just by dotting. This technique is actually requires a lot of practice, and yeah, I hope everyone just gives this a try. So right here we're on the frame of the Knight Rampager. I'm also focusing some of this streaking on some of the nuts and bolts. So you just gotta wash random nuts and bolts because the protection has been worn off, and just pull the ink down with your finger, and that's how you do streaking using acrylics.
So scale modelers do streaking using a bunch of pre-made materials such as Vallejo streaking wash. However, from our end, what we can do is I've thinned down some transparent black ink, aka noun oil, and you can very easily do that for streaking. What you can do is draw a vertical line using a very fine tip brush and use a clean finger to wipe off the excess so that you can create a faded line towards the end. Weathering tip number 3, filtering. So I've seen many scale modelers do this using an enamel filter over a weathered area to create the rust effect showing from under the paint. As a miniature and figure painter, how I thought to replicate this was to use some transparent orange ink and walnut ink and mix them both together, thin them down, and I felt that this creates a pretty close realistic orange filter for rusting. This also can be used for rust streaking.
So we are going to be doing some filtering. So filtering in armor modeler terms, they have filters which are pre-made, and yeah, they're also transparent. In my very humble opinion, what I'm trying to do is to create the increase in saturation, and right here I'm going to be using Green Star Fluor's pure transparent orange ink to do a bit of filtering. So in my opinion, what filtering is to me is that the rust is rusting under the paint, and because it's rusting under the paint, it sort of like seeps through the permeable areas. Because it does seep through the permeable areas, what happens is that some of the paint that's covering it tends to be discolored and filtered with the rust color, hence the name filtering. Okay, so filtering will also always come with a bit of streaking, and that's why I'm doing some streaking right here. This is a little preview of a project which I will be completing really soon. It is of the Knight Tyrant, and yeah, I hope to show you guys the Knight Tyrant really soon.
So there we have it. Those were some weathering tips and tricks of how you can produce really awesome weather effect using only acrylics. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.
So in the next video, we'll be painting the Sky Earth NMM as seen on my Void Dragon. So I hope you join us for the next video, and I will have quite a little bit to share on my concepts about the Sky Earth NMM technique.
I'd like to take this time and opportunity to thank my patrons for allowing me to do this. Through their support, I'm able to paint and record these awesome tutorials so that we get to become better miniature painters together. The exclusive video for this series is the Bloody Copper, which is lining the entire carapace of the Chaos Knight Rampager. And I hope you can support the channel by becoming a patron. For as little as $1 per month, you get to see my finished work earlier than anyone else in this world. However, if you can't become a patron, that's okay too. I'd like to thank you for your time, for watching to the end. If you could, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and all the other stuff, because it really helps the channel grow, and I hope to see you in the next video. See you.